Matrix structure. Ang matrix structure ay isang uri ng organizational structure kung saan ang isang employee ay may dalawang boss, ang project manager at ang functional manager. Ibig sabihin, may vertical at lateral communication. Maganda ito dahil mas nagiging flexible ang organization at mas nabibigyan ng importansya ang mga projects. However, may disadvantages din ito dahil pwedeng magkaroon ng conflict sa authority, agawan sa resources at confusion sa roles ng employees. Next is centralization and decentralization. Ang centralization ay kapag ang decision making ay nasa top management lamang. Samantalang ang decentralization ay kapag ang authority ay ipinapamahagi sa iba't ibang levels ng organization. Sa decentralization, mas mabilis ang decision making, mas responsive sa clients, mas aware ang managers sa costs, at mas motivated ang junior managers. Pero kailangan nito ang maayos na communication at coordination para maging effective. And kadalasan, ang malalaking organizations ay mas leaning sila sa decentralization, specialization at mas maraming rules. Next is levels of the organization. May tatlong levels ang organization. First is ang technical level na tumututok sa actual work at daily operations. Second, ang managerial level na responsible sa coordination, resource allocation at control ng operations. And pangatlo, ang community o institutional level na nakatuon sa overall direction ng organization at sa relasyon nito sa external environment at sa society. So next is Mintzberg's 9 design parameters. Ang Mintzberg's design parameters ay mga gabay kung paano dinidisenyo ang organizational structure. Kasama dito ang job specialization, behavior formalization, at training para mas standardize ang skills. Tinutukoy din nito kung paano i-group ang units, gaano kalaki ang bawat unit, paano ginagawa ang planning and control, at paano ipinamamahagi ang decision making sa pamamagitan ng vertical at horizontal decentralization. Next is organizational relationships and work design. Ang work design ay tungkol sa kung paano ina-arrange ang work para maging efficient at organized. Isa na sa alang-alang dito ang coordination, malino na division of work, economy, at management process. Mahalaga rin ito para maiwasan ang conflict at para mas tumaas ang job satisfaction ng employees. Next is formal organizational relationships. May tatlong uri ng formal relationships. Ang line relationship, ito ay ang direct flow of authority mula top to bottom. Ang functional relationship ay pagitan ng specialist at line managers na nagbibigay ng advice. Ang staff relationship naman ay ang mga support roles na tumutulong sa senior management. Span of control. Ang span of control ay tumutukoy sa bilang ng subordinates na direktang minamanage ng isang manager. Naaapektuhan ito ng complexity ng work, kakayahan ng manager, oras na maibibigay sa subordinates, skills at training ng employees, communication systems, at kahit physical location nila. Next, people and organizational relationships. Ang bahaging ito ay tungkol sa pag-align ng tao at organization. Kasama dito ang objectives, task division, authority, at organizational forms tulad ng line, staff, project, at matrix organizations. Kapag maayos ang alignment, napapanatili ang balance ng system at nagiging effective ang organization as a whole.
Now, let's talk about factors affecting organizational structure selection in multinational corporations. So, the organizational structure of a multinational corporation usually determines how employees are arranged, how authority flows, and how coordination and communication occurs. So, the selection of an appropriate structure is influenced by external and internal environmental factors. So, first, let's talk about the external factors. The first external factor would be the economic factor. Now, this would be the market size, the demand and supply conditions of the business or corporation, and the competitors' strategies. Now, these factors influence how organizations should be structured to meet the business objectives effectively. Now, let's talk about the political and legal factors. Now, for the political and legal factors, this would include the government rules and regulations and policies, legal compliance requirements, and organizational structure must align with national laws to avoid legal consequences, because if they don't follow the law, they might have a very big issue in the future. So another factor would be the socio-economic factor. Now, this would be the cultures, values, beliefs, and social norms. So, an organization must adapt their structures to suit a societal expectation in different countries, especially if they're operating multinational. Now, the final external factor would be technological factors. Now, this would be the advances in technology which can improve the communication flow between parties in the corporations, and it could reduce the need for manpower and other manual works. Now, let's talk about the natural and geographical factors. Now, the natural factors would be the differences in time zones, climate, and locations. So, if a multinational company works in different countries, they need to factor this. So, now let's talk about the internal factors. Now, the internal factors would be the size of the company, the product range and services, and the company strategy. Depending on the size of the company, you will really need to scale down things if your corporation can't do it. And regarding the product range and services, organizational structure must comply with the type of product you give out. Now let's talk about regulations. Areas of government regulation of business. A state control of economic activity. Now, a centrally planned economy is an economic system where the government controls major economic decisions such as pricing, wages, production, and resource allocation. Now, these four would be the advantages of planned economy. The first is driven for collective benefits. Now, if a government decided that economies can be proposed to serve the communal rather than individual needs, then following that system means that rewards and other benefits are distributed equally among the people. Now, economics of scale. Now, a government-run economy would endeavor to replace a number of firms with a single firm for the whole economy. So that means that one businesses provides for everyone, for every single people within that country. So this makes the business the sole beneficiary on the advantage of being the single producer in that market. Now, the inherently protected government planned economy is not subjected to downsides of market economies, mostly because they are protected by the government, because The government's interest is that the business themselves improves, because once the business improves, so can the lives of the people that lives within that country. Now, the last would be stability. Now, when government is in charge, long-term venture can be made without fear of a market downward spiral. Mostly because if the business themselves is backed by the government and they are the only business within that country, that means that they do not have to factor in competition or other issues that they would face. That means they have stable growth and profits. Now let's talk about regulation.
So next, let's move on to the disadvantages of planned economic activity. The first one is inefficient use of resources in a planned economy. So government planners often struggle to know what consumers truly want and how much to produce. This leads to mismatches between supply and demand, creating shortage of some goods and surpluses of others. As a result, labor, materials, and government resources are often wasted. The second one is market versus central planning. Market economies use prices as signals to guide productions and prevent long-term shortages or oversupply. Planned economies lack these accurate signals, so it is difficult to decide what and how much to produce. Efficiency is better achieved when producers respond to demand and profit motives rather than central instructions. Restraint of democracy in trade. Central planning can limit innovation and self-management because business have little incentives to improve or take risks. This often leads to slow economic progress, employee apathy, and frustration. Economic democracy, where people have more choice and participation in trade, is hard to achieve under such system. So these are the impositions of legal and administrative barriers. The first one is licensing and regulatory requirements. Too many permits and approvals are often required for businesses to operate. This consumes time, discourages entrepreneurship, and can create opportunities for corruption or bribery. Number 2, excessive and arbitrary taxation. Complex and frequently changing tax rules make compliance difficult, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises or SMEs. High or unclear taxes can push businesses to operate informally, reducing legally economic activity. Number 3, poor banking system. Banks may require strict collateral and guarantors for loans, and high risk of non-repayment make lending difficult. This limits access to capital, making it hard for small businesses to grow. Lack of government commitment. When the government does not actively reduce administrative barriers, informal businesses thrive. This results in lost potential tax revenue and slows formal economic development. So, next, let's move to regulations relevant to business conduct. Number 1 is advertising. Businesses must ensure advertising is truthful and non-misleading. All claims must be proven, and labels should provide accurate product information to protect consumers. Number 2, employment and labor laws cover wages, benefits, workplace safety, and equal opportunity. The Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, sets minimum wages and ensures social security and unemployment protections are provided. For number 3, environmental regulations. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DENR, oversees compliance. Businesses must meet environmental standards, and audits or inspections encourage responsible practices. So, So the last one is safety and health. Employers are legally required to provide hazard-free and sanitary workplace. Compliance is checked through regular inspection and grading scales. Safety standard must also be included in company manuals and daily procedures to prevent accidents and ensure legal operation.
Ang CSC o ang tinatawag nilang Corporate Social Responsibility ay tumutukoy sa mga responsibilidad ng isang kumpanya, hindi lang sa kita, kundi pati sa batas, etika at kabutihan ng lipunan. Ibig sabihin nito, hindi lang pera ang iniisip ng negosyo, kundi kung paano rin ito nakatutulong at nakakaapekto sa mga tao at komunidad. Magkaugnay ang CSC at business ethics, pero hindi sila pareho. Ang business ethics ay may nakatuon sa tama at maling kilos ng mga tao sa loob ng kumpanya, habang ang CSC naman ay mas malawak at tumitingin sa kabuuang responsibilidad ng organisasyon sa lipunan. Ayon kay Carroll at Buchholz, may 4 na uri ang responsibilidad ang isang kumpanya. Una na rito ay ang economic responsibility. Pangalawa ang legal responsibility. Pangatlo ang ethical responsibility at ang pang-apat ang discretionary o philanthropic responsibility. Sa ngayon, mas mataas na ang inaasahan ng lipunan sa mga kumpanya. Karamihan sa mga negosyo ay hindi na lang nakatuon sa kita kundi pati sa pagpapabuti ng komunidad at lipunan. Ipinapakita ng mga pag-aaral na ang kumpanyang may magandang reputasyon sa pagiging responsable at ethical ay kadalasang mas nagtatagumpay, ngunit mahalagang tandaan na ang tunay na dahilan ng CSR ay hindi lang para sa pera kundi dahil ito ay tama, makatarungan at makatao. Ang CSC o ang tinatawag Contemporary Social Issues. Ang mga kumpanya ay humaharap sa iba't ibang isyu at suliraning panglipunan. Ang ilan sa mga isyung ito ay direktang kaugnay ng kanilang operasyon habang ang iba naman ay hindi direktang konektado sa negosyo. So, hindi siya ganun kadaling talakayin o ipaliwanag ang lahat ng mga social issues na kinakaharap ng mga negosyo dahil napakarami nito. Sumunod naman ay ang environmental issue. Maraming kumpanya ang matagal nang pinupuna dahil sa masamang epekto nila sa kalikasan, kabilang na dito ang pag-aaksaya ng likas na yaman at ang pagdulot ng mga problemang pagkapaligiran tulad ng polusyon at global warming. Isa sa mga pangunahing dahilan nito ay ang patukoy na paggamit nila ng fuels na wala ang malaking salik sa pag-init ng mundo. Dahil dito, may pressure mula sa gobyerno at sa lipunan na sundin ang mga kumpanya ang mas mahigpit na environmental laws at baguhin ang kanilang mga proseso ng produksyon upang mas kaunti ang pinsalang dulot sa kalikasan. So, mayroon ding ibang pang-isyong pangkapaligiran tulad ng maling pagtatapon ng basura, kakalbo ng kagubatan or deforestation at pagkasira ng mga lupa or land degradation. Sa mga darating na taon, inaasang mas malaki pa ang responsibilidad ng mga kumpanya pagdating sa pangangalapa ng kalikasan. Sumunod naman ay ang global issues. Globalisasyon ay nagdudulot ng pagkakataon at hamon para sa mga kumpanya. Sa isang banda, nakakatulong ito sa pag-unlad ng ekonomiya, mas mataas na sahod, at mas magandang pamumuhay sa mahihirap na bansa. So, parang meron siyang kabilang side naman. Ito naman yung nagdudulot ng pang-aabuso sa manggagawa, child labor, pagkasira ng kalikasan, at paglabag ng karapatang pantao. Kabilang sa mga problema ang di patas na labor standards, unsafe workplace, maling pag-market ng produkto, at dumping na pumipinsala sa lokal na industriya. Kaya, mahalaga na maging responsable at ethical ang mga multinational corporation sa kanilang operasyon sa buong mundo. Technological issues. So, ang mga isyong teknolohiyal ay mahalagang usapin sa panlipunan dahil malaki ang epekto ng teknolohiya sa buhay ng tao at sa operasyon ng mga negosyo.
Halimbawa na dito ay ang internet ay nagbibigay ng maraming oportunidad para sa pagbenta at pagmamarket ng mga produkto at serbisyo. Ngunit nagbukas din ito ng posibilidad ng pang-aabuso ng mga kumpanya. Dahil dito, kailangan bigyang pansin ang privacy at seguridad ng mga personal at confidential na impormasyon. Contemporary ethical behavior in the enterprise. Ang ethical na pag-uugali sa isang negosyo o organisasyon ay ito ang pinakamahalaga dahil nakakatulong ito sa tagumpay ng kumpanya. Kapag binibigyang halaga ng isang kumpanya ang etika, nagkakaroon ito ng tiwala at magandang reputasyon mula sa mga tao. Ang pagtupad sa mga responsibilidad at ang patas na pagtrato sa mga customer, supplier, empleyado at iba pang kasangkot ng isang pagmatagalang puhunan para sa mas maliwanag na kinabukasan ng kumpanya. Una na rito ay ang character or ang sinasabi nating pagkatao. Ang character is ito yung gumagabay sa ating kilos kahit walang nakakakita. Ang bawat tayo may kakayahang hubugin, baguhin nila yung kanilang mga character. Then, nandito rin yung nabubuo ang mabuting character sa pamamagitan ng tamang pag-iisip at paggawa ng mabuting gawain. Sunod naman ay ang ethics. Ang ethics ay ang tuntunin o pamantayan kung ang katanggap-tanggap na asal sa lipunan. Nagsisilbi itong gabay sa pang-araw-araw na desisyon, moral at tumutulong sa mga kumpanya na malaman kung tama o makatarungan ang kanilang mga ginagawa. Pangatlo ay ang integrity. Ang integridad ay pagiging tapat at totoo sa salita at gawa. Ibig sabihin nito ay pagsunod sa mga moral na prinsipyo sa bawat desisyon. Kapag ang isang tao ay negosyo ay may integridad, pagkatiwalaan sila. Ang pinakahuli ay ang batas o ang law. Ang mga batas ay may kalentong ginawa upang matugunan ang pangangailangan ng mga tao at gabayan kung ano ang tama at mali. Ngunit mahalagang tandaan na ang may mga pagkakataon na isang illegal na gawain ay maaaring ituring na ethical, tulad ng ginawa ni Martin Luther King Jr. na lumabag sa ilang batas upang ipaglaban ang karapatan at tukasan ang diskriminasyon. Ang ethical na pag-uugali ay mahalaga sa negosyo dahil ito ay nagtatayo ng tiwala, respeto at pangmatagalang tagumpay. Ethical behavior in the enterprise.
Good day, I'm Jeric Shea Monteclaro, and at this juncture, we're going to talk about ethical behavior in the enterprise. So, pag sinabing ethical, ito ang pagkilala natin kung ano ang tama o mali. So, ang ethical behavior naman, it refers to the principles, values, and standards that guides an organization's actions, decisions, and interaction as it pursues its goals. So, pinapakita dito kung paano binibigyang halaga ng isang business ang kanilang employees, customers, and pati na rin ang environment. So, upon meeting the obligation of the company, they must conform to an approach that is legally right and ethically right. So now let's proceed to the 6 foundations of trust. So we have character, ethics, integrity, laws, morals, and value. So una is character. So, ang character, ito yung mga likas na kalidad, values, at moral principle na bumubuo sa isang individual o organisasyon. So, ang character na ito ay bumabago depende sa magiging aksyon na maipapakita. Halimbawa, ang isang manager sa loob ng isang taon na naging mahusay or naging maayos ang kanyang performance, ngunit nakita siyang naging corrupt o nagnakaw ng budget ng kumpanya. So, sa case na to, bumago yung karakter niya. So, now let's proceed to what is ethics. Ethics is a formal set of rules, principles, and framework that outlines the acceptable conduct in the society or in organization. So, as what I've said earlier, ito ang pagkilala kung ano ang tama at mali. karamihan sa mga organisasyon ngayon ay mayroong code of ethics na kung saan ito ay nagsisilbing basehan kung mayroong pangyayari katulad ng hindi pagkakaintindihan. So, the next is integrity. Integrity is to be honest and sincere. So, next is laws. The laws are rules and regulation designed to express the needs of the people. So, ang gumagawa ng laws ay mga, for instance, is kung sa corporation is yung may mga authority katulad ng board of directors and mga managers na magsisilbing gabay sa mga employees. Next is morals. Morals naman is mga set ng rules or mode of conduct in which society is based. And lastly, value. Value is an act of customs and institutions that a group of people regard in favorable way. So now let's proceed to the role of the state and its impact on the business organization. So the relationship between the state and business organization is foundational to economic development and societal order. Governments do not operate in isolation from the private sector. Instead, they shape the environment in which the business function, while the business derives growth that supports public goal like job creation and infrastructure. So these two are very much interconnected, ang business and the state. So they benefit one another. Then the next is pag-uusapan naman natin ang core roles of the state in shaping business operation. So, number 1, establishing rules and standards. Government create comprehensive regulatory framework to ensure fairness, safety, and accountability across industry. So, mayroon tong subcategories. Number 1 is labor laws, environmental regulation, trade policies, product safety standards. So, number 2 naman is ensuring fair competition. And lastly, safeguarding stakeholders. So, meron din tayong tinatawag na consumer protection. So, consumer protection is the government role in business includes protecting the consumer or customer, guarantee the purchase on the resource in law.
Now, we will talk about the role of government policy. Government policy plays a very important role in the growth and stability of our economy. First, the government promotes business growth by giving tax incentives to companies. These incentives attract foreign investors and encourage companies like BPO to operate in the Philippines, which help create more jobs for our people. Second, the government provides essential public services such as education and services. These services are necessary for businesses and society to function properly, and they cannot be fully handled by private companies alone. Lastly, the government protects the economy and consumers, especially during difficult times. It does this by giving subsidies on basic goods, providing training programs like TESDA for unemployed workers, and controlling high prices through different price regulation policies. So, overall, government policies help strengthen businesses, support the public, and maintain economic stability. So next is the pressure group. A pressure group is an organized group of people
who try to influence government policies and business decisions in order to protect their interests or promote a specific cause. There are different types of pressure groups in our society. First are the economic pressure groups or giant corporations. These are large companies that influence laws and regulation to protect their businesses. Next are professional organizations. These are groups like doctors, lawyers, and accountants who help set standards and influence important decisions in their profession. The third are trade associations. These are groups of businesses that work together to influence policies that affect their industry. Fourth are trade unions. These groups represent workers and fight for better salaries, benefits, and working conditions. Fifth are the public pressure groups. These groups advocate for public issues such as environmental protection, consumer rights, and social welfare. Sixth are the sectoral pressure groups. These represent specific sectors of society such as women, urban poor, and LGBTQ plus group and promote their rights. Seventh are religious or the attitude pressure groups. These are faith-based organizations that influence government decisions based on their beliefs. Lastly are the governmental and units pressure groups or the LGUs. These are local government that lobby the national government for fund, projects, and development programs for their communities. So, in summary, pressure groups play a major role in shaping government policies and business practices in our country. There are different types of. Let us now talk about income and wealth distribution. Income distribution refers to how the total income of a country is shared among its people. It focuses on the differences in the amount of money earned by individuals and households. When income distribution is uneven, it leads to inequality, which can affect economic growth and the quality of life of the population. On the other hand, wealth distribution shows how assets such as land, property, savings, and investments are owned by different groups in society. This is different from income because it looks at ownership, not just earnings. Wealth distribution highlights the gap between rich, middle class, and the poor, and it explains why some families remain wealthy across generations while others struggle. Let us now talk about.
This is our last topic for this chapter, and it's called the economic inequality. So it is about the unequal distribution of income and wealth sa loob ng society. And also, it's shaped by historical, social, and economic factors na maka-affect sa mga tao sa pag-access sa mga opportunities and resources. So this presentation, i-discuss natin yung about sa major causes na economic inequality from cultural influences and development to education, globalization, and labor market conditions. Let's head on to the first one, which is the culture and religion. So, cultural values and religions has a greatly influence towards the work, education, and wealth. Through the historical colonization, it weakens the institution and protected elites' interests, making inclusive growth difficult. The next one is development. So, during the process of development, syempre, kung sino yung naunang nakaka-access sa capital, sila rin yung naunang nakaka-benefit. So, doon na nagsa-start yung pagtaas ng inequality. The third one is the diversity choices. So, yung mga tao, like individuals, is meron talagang different choices regarding to work, leisure, and risk-taking. So, those choices can lead to unequal income outcomes kahit na they are equally capable people. So, like, example nito is like, may dalawang skilled individuals. So they earn differently because one starts a business while the other chooses a stable employment. So, ibig sabihin nito is, syempre, if mag-start ka ng sarili mong business is, mas malaki yung profit na makakuha mo. Unlike sa stable employment, syempre, hindi mo control yung sahod na binibigay sa'yo. So, may possibilities na maliit yung sahod na nakukuha mo, although nagagawa mo yung proper mo na work. The fourth one is education. So, di ba education, it helps us enhance our skills and also it can contribute sa wages natin. Pero, it has limited access sa ibang mga tao, lalo na mapupunta sila sa low-paying jobs. So, ang example nito is, yung mga graduate students is in the high-demand field, so like, they will earn more. Pero, yung mga hindi nakagraduate sa college, since gipit na, is they will have the low-income work. This is our last topic. The fifth one is globalization. So, as we know, meron global competition. So, sa ngayon is gina-force talaga ng firm to prioritize efficiency and technology. So, nagkakaroon ng low labor demand. So, ibig sabihin nito is mga companies ay gina-replace yung workers with machines since, di ba, ang machine is high-tech na sila. So, kaya nilang mapabilis yung mga gawain and also makahelp din ang mga machines para maging stay competitive. Yun. Then, yung mga workers na yun is, syempre, mawalan sila ng trabaho kasi tatanggalin na sila since mas mabilis naman ang technology kaysa sa mga tao, di ba? The sixth one is the inflation. So, di ba inflation, it reduces the value of savings and fixed income. So, yung mga mahihirap, syempre sila yung mas kawawa kasi di ba tataas yung value ng mga foods, mga ganun. So, like, mas kawawa talaga yung mga poor people kaysa sa mga mayayaman. So, ang pang-7 is the labor market. So, syempre, wages depend on supply and demand for skills. So, sa sobrang dependent sa supply and demand is nagkakaroon ng oversupply, especially sa profession. So, example nito is, di ba sa Philippines is marami ng nurses and teachers every year mag-graduate, di ba? So, nagkakaroon ng lack of local jobs. Kaya, mostly sa kanila is nag-work abroad. So, yun. Lastly is the wealth condensation. So, ibig sabihin nito is yung mga existing wealth, they allow greater investment and high returns, sustaining inequality across generation. So, ibig sabihin nito, like, ang example nito is yung wealthy families is, syempre, nagkakaroon sila ng growth and also, gina-pass on generation nila assets nila. While sa poor families, they struggle to save and invest. The fifth one is globalization.